MMTLP, and I spoke to Farzad about this beforehand. This is the issue of a systemic problem that impacts Tesla, I think, more than any other company that is traded. And this is straight stock, not a business. So we're kind of looking at it differently. And I'm going to give you like a very brief fact summary, and then I'll cut to the chase what the real issues are. So there's a company, the company is called Torchlight. It gets into a merger with another company called Metamaterials. As it turns out, ironically, Metamaterials has an office next to Tesla, I think in Canada, just inadvertently. In the process, Torchlight, who merged with Metamaterials, which is MMAT, issues a dividend, a preferred share in that merger process. That share is called MMTLP, which is the symbol I put on there. Without consent, sometime later, market makers, with the consent of FINRA, let that MMTLP preferred dividend trade on the over-the-counter market. It wasn't supposed to trade, but they permitted to trade. During this process, the market makers create millions and hundreds of millions of fake synthetic shares. They short the stock. They create all these fake shares. Eventually, we get to December 8th. So I bring it to this time forward. As of that point in time, if you owned MMTLP, you would get the dividend stock, which was in a private company, which was an energy company. And the 9th and 12th were supposed to be for the shorts to cover their positions. Now, in this case, there were hundreds of millions of fake shorts, and there was a specific date by which they had to cover and close their positions. So everybody believed that there'd be a short squeeze because there weren't enough shorts to cover, and you could only cover, you couldn't sell, in effect. So what happens on the 8th? FINRA steps in. They issue a U3 extraordinary circumstance halt after the stock had moved from $8.25 at the start of the day to $2.89 at the end of the day. They don't permit the trading. They don't cause the shorts to cover. And as of today, we are January 6th, the stock is still in limbo because nobody knows what to do. They don't know how to cover. And the ultimate problem is, and this is the problem systemically, and that's why Tesla moves 20% in a day. Maybe today there's short covering. When they hit 101, maybe the shorts thought, wow, it's a cheap price, let's cover. And they got out, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we have a 20% move. But the problem is, these are fake shorts. And once there's a tactic by which they can move these shorts outside the United States. Once they're moved outside the United States, when the regulators look at the short percentages, they don't count those shares. So let's say Tesla is really 10% short, it might show 5%. And when it shows 5%, there are algorithms that kick in to re-short it. And that process continues to happen. So, and this is artificial. And everybody who's on margin might be in a margin position. They get margined out. And beyond that, what happens is until the shorts actually close their positions, they don't have a gain. So they don't pay taxes on it. And they're laundering money. So, and how do we know that? How do we know that the shorts are doing better than other hedge funds that are doing it a more standard way of business? Because yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Citadel came out with their earnings. Whereas in 2022, all hedge funds trading long and short had an average gain of minus 13%. Citadel, who is the king of the shorts, in 2022, their fund was up approximately 39%. That's no accident. And all retail shareholders are getting screwed in the process. So MMTLP happens to be an ongoing example of this, but Tesla's price, every time we see it go down like 10% in a day, that's not by accident. Those are algorithms kicking in, and that's shorting of illegal shares. very difficult to prove, but there's a movement out there that is interested in getting those market makers and the regulators to take notice and to act. So I would encourage everyone who owns Tesla stock to take a look at MMTLP just to get an understanding of the process, and then become familiar with the synthetic shorting process and how it impacts Tesla. And I really think that we as a group, as Tesla shareholders and all retail shareholders, can really influence regulators, Congress, et cetera, to stop this practice, which is harming all of us.
So let me just recap here. Thank you so much for going through that. I feel like we're just getting grassroots movements all the time out of this channel, which I love. Let me try to recap it in a way that maybe sticks better to my brain. So there's an example in MMTLP that there's some sort of shadiness going on with shorting, synthetic shorts, basically a lot of like super shady activity where there are people that are using this shady activity to force the stock to come down in an artificial way, which allows them to make a ton of money. And this activity is not really available for the regular public to see because they have ways to hide it, right? And so MMTLP is an example of this being a kind of like an example of it going to the extreme where now it's halted and people are like, what the hell's going on? I don't know how to cover my short. But there could be some evidence, hard to prove, like you said. Just FYI, Richard is a lawyer and he has a law background, and a lot of the stuff he does is, he knows how to look at stuff, just an FYI. So there might be reason to believe that the recent price moves with Tesla in, say, the last few weeks, the last few months, where there are these very aggressive move downwards, perhaps the market, was saying, hey, let's sell some shares. But there could be an additional pressure or more movements that are caused by this synthetic type of shorting, which could put artificial downward pressure, and people are able to profit out of that artificial downward pressure. Did I sort of recap that correctly, Richard?
Yeah, not only do they profit, but they don't pay taxes on it because they don't close their positions, and they're in essence laundering money offshore. Because until they close their positions, they don't have a gain. And so they can just keep the positions open. And a lot of times the shorts are shorting companies that are in precarious financial position. And if the company goes out of business or files bankruptcy, they in effect don't ever close their positions, and they may not ever declare the profits they had. So it's a huge issue, because think about it. All the tax revenue that we don't get into the coffers that should go in, that increase the amount that we have to borrow, that increase the interest costs, that increase inflation. It's really I think it's a huge issue that gets buried because the insiders profit.